Hi folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. Well, I got to tell you, now that it's fall, this presents a real quandary, a real mystery to me. I've spent my whole life trying to figure out where the bass go in our tributary rivers in the fall. And I got to tell you, I haven't discovered the answer. I've gone out so many times in the fall to my favorite areas, and I find that the fish are gone. Where do they go? You know, all the experts will tell you that they're going to go to their winter grounds. They're going to probably school up in deeper water where they won't be as affected by the changes that temperature and everything brings this time of the year. But the one thing I can tell you is all the pools that I fish in the summer, I can travel to now, even with the water low, and the fish have vacated a lot of those pools. And I do find in the fall that a lot of the bigger bass in these tributaries will school up together. So if you can find a pool where there's one good bass, say you catch one that's 2.5 to 3 pounds, chances are there may be dozens in that same pool right now. And I don't know if they're waiting out a giant exodus that they take, but it's still a mystery to me where they go. I'm referring now to the Grass River and even the Racket. Both of these waters I fish all the time. And when I go back to the same waters in the fall, I never seem to have much luck. Now, that's sort of a negative report, and I didn't want it to be that. But I just want you to be aware that conditions do change. And in most other waterways, ponds and lakes especially, in some of our bigger rivers like the St. Lawrence, this is different with the St. Lawrence. One thing you should be aware of in the fall is a lot of fish, they'll come into their own now, muskies. Muskie fishing in the St. Lawrence, which is tops in the world, but it usually slows way down in the summer. But now in the fall, they become very active, preparing for winter. But they start moving to other waters. You'll find fish on the move now, real in sort of walleyes we've talked about for years, how walleyes migrate. And I know they'll migrate as much as perhaps 100 miles in some cases. Walleyes have been traced and tagged and followed in the Susquehanna River, and they've moved all the way from some of the origin feeder streams in New York State all the way down to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and then they come back again at later times. It's amazing to follow the way fish move in the world during different times of the year. And this is a time in the fall where normally the fishing really does pick up. The water temperature cools down, they become more active, and it should be a time when you could have some great success. And don't forget Black Lake, and all the rock structures in Black Lake become smallmouth havens. And I remember from maybe 15 years ago when one of the people that had a business on Black Lake told me, come back in the fall and I'll take you out to some of the best smallmouth fishing you've ever had. And at the time, I had never seen smallmouth fishing quite like what it was in the fall in Black Lake. That was before this tremendous exodus of giant bass in the St. Lawrence River. Now the river has become sort of the ultimate smallmouth fishing of any place. But don't forget Black Lake. It could be great, and you could find them very easily. You can see where there's rock structures. All you got to do is fish around those areas. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.